Hey everyone, welcome back to Breakthrough Innovation, where we uncover what it really takes to lead change, create value, and build what's next. I'm JL Heather. Preston couldn't make it today, but together we lead Centered, a firm that helps organizations navigate complexity, spark creativity, and unlock the full potential of their teams through innovation coaching and strategy. Today's guest brings a completely fresh lens to innovation, one rooted not in technology or frameworks, but in the human skills teams desperately need to work better together. I'm thrilled to welcome Andrew Davies, the Better Meetings Director of Artly Working, where he uses improv and theater to help companies like Netflix, Roblox, Meta, and Google build stronger, more connected, high performing teams. Andrew's award winning approach blends improvisation, facilitation, and play to transform how people gather, communicate, and solve problems. From making meetings something people actually want to attend, which is a feat in of itself, to proving that improv isn't just for extroverts, he's redefining what effective collaboration looks like in the modern workplace. Andrew, I've always been fascinated by improv. Maybe you're going to be the one to convince me to give it a try. I'm excited to dive in. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, JL. I'm really excited to be here. And if you end up trying improv after this conversation, that's a win for me. That sounds great.
We'll keep an eye out for it. Like we were talking before, the Herald is one example of improv that's always fascinated. It's fascinated me. It's come up over and over. So we'll kind of see what happens. But I am curious. So you've actually trained at the Magnet Theater as well as facilitation at Georgetown University. So you've kind of gone both sides of this. And I'm curious, like, how do those two worlds come together in your practice? Like, how do you meld those skills?
Yeah. So studying improvisation in New York at the Magnet Theater was really eye opening in terms of what a group can create and kind of the incredible magic of a group mind to create
Hmm.
from scratch entire shows, entire worlds, characters, and stories. And studying facilitation at Georgetown, I think helped open my eyes about creating spaces where people can learn from each other, create together, and grow together. So I think the Venn diagram that connects facilitation and improv is all about elevating the wisdom of the group, elevating the experiences and ideas that people are bringing to the table, and how powerful that can be in all kinds of circumstances, and especially where we spend the most time in the workplace.
No, I love that, especially that elevating the wisdom of the group. Like that's such a powerful statement that I don't think people fully understand until they experience it. So often it's that loudest voice in the room and things that kind of take over, and good facilitation really helps bring it up. On the flip side, I think improvisation, I think whose line is it anyways? I think all those kinds of silly improv kind of shows that will make you laugh, but don't necessarily feel like they would elevate the wisdom. But I
Yeah.
do think once you combine the 2, I think it's really powerful. So maybe the next place to go is when you are bringing improv in with a team, sparking creative thinking, helping them innovate, uh, how does improv help? Like, to walk through kind of what you see and what people experience.
Yeah, so I think too often people think of things like improvisation and comedy or just creativity in general as kind of a given talent that you either have or don't. And we don't recognize enough that it's a muscle that you can either grow or
Yeah.
atrophy depending on how you use it, right? And so often when we come into teams, we will see if they're functioning well, how well people are listening to each other, how ideas are firing and new things are happening, and how if it's dysfunctional, people have really shut down and decided in the workplace, like, I'm gonna do my thing, I'm gonna send my emails, and I'm gonna log out and go home. And so a
Right.
lot of the work that we do coming in is really trying to respark that creativity and build that muscle as a team. And I think to those skills that are so important, the number one skill I would say for being an improviser, people think that it's being hilarious, being loud, being funny. I would say the number one skill is actually your listening skills, right?
Right.
Because you're building on each other's ideas because everything is created in the moment. If you're not a good listener, you can be brilliantly hilarious, but it will become obvious that you're not hearing anyone else's ideas. And so I think that is a skill that we work on with teams. So we start with very small games. We'll just start with sharing our names in a circle or something very small, getting a rhythm, even silent games where we're just doing some movement. But what we're building is that muscle to notice more, to listen more, and to work together collaboratively and then build towards some of the harder things like creating a commercial together or performing a scene together where we really need those listening skills.
That sounds fun and slightly terrifying. I won't lie. So it's great.
Yeah.
I do think though, like that sounds like something where not only does there have to be a lot of listening, but there has to be safety. So the buzzword these days is psychological safety. I love the
Mm.
concept, but I think it gets overused sometimes. Help me understand, like, how do you actually help people feel safe enough that they can actually contribute? I'm sure listening helps, but what else do you do to generate that safety?
Absolutely. So, one of the first things I always say to folks when we start a session is that we are not asking you to jump way out of your comfort zone and do something crazy. We're just asking you to notice where your comfort is and just try and turn that dial like one little notch, right?
Yeah.
So for some folks, that means participating at all takes all of their courage and all their strength. For some people, it's they don't speak for the first half. They're really just listening, they're not jumping in, but just stepping into the circle kind of takes all their courage. So it's just noticing that a little bit. And what I encourage folks about also when we play games, we do activities to model this, is that what's beautiful about improv is that it feels very high stakes, but it's actually very low stakes, right?
Right.
Like JL, the work that you're doing with companies and teams is so high stakes and so much work, and you're being put a lot of things on. But when we talk about improv, you're like, no, no, that sounds terrifying, right? Like that sounds
No.
crazy. And that's what's so cool about improv is that if I told us, JL, we're doing a scene right now, you'd get sweaty, you'd get nervous, you'd be
Oh yeah.
scared, right? So you'd have all those feelings of as if I just told you give a keynote speech for 1,000 people, right? And when in fact,
Right.
it's just you and I talking, right? So that's what's beautiful about improv is we get to notice those feelings when it feels really high stakes. We feel nervous, we feel sweaty, we feel scared, but actually there's very little consequence. So I remind folks everything's going to stay in the room, everything's going to stay with us. This is just practice time for us to build that muscle so that when you are in the workplace and you prepared a presentation with a friend and they're sick that day and you're terrified to stand up there, you've got some experience with that muscle of being able to improvise to feel comfortable in that space.
Right. Well, it's interesting. As you were talking, I kind of found myself thinking about like, what is it that actually scares me? And the term that came up is, well, maybe let me take a step back. Those keynotes, those workshops, there is risk there. There's business risk. There's all sorts of like types of risk there, but it's risk that over the years, you say build the muscle, but I would say I've built a tolerance for.
Mm,
I feel like when we talk about improv, there's a different kind of risk there that I would call social risk, maybe. That
mm.
idea that failure maybe doesn't necessarily result in a missed promotion or anything like that, but failure results in a different kind of pain that maybe I haven't really inoculated myself against. And I don't know that I have a question there. That's just kind of what was occurring to me is that difference in types of risk.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I think what you're identifying is the social risk of looking foolish, right? Like looking stupid, maybe saying something accidentally offensive or problematic or confusing, right? And so those kinds of things definitely can scare folks. I think as we're playing, the important thing with our workshops with improv is to reflect on the learning as we do it, right? John Dewey had
Yeah,
the saying that we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience.
right.
So oftentimes after we do some improv, I'll check in with folks and say, like, were you scared during that? Were you noticing? And what I always find, JL, is that we are terrified when we're performing and we're nervous about it and we're judging ourselves, but everyone else is rooting for us, right? Everyone that
Yeah,
was watching the scene, everyone that was watching the game is cheering for us. And so I think that's the important thing too that we learn or relearn is that we are our own harshest critics, right? And so you are worried about saying the wrong thing, but nobody else is worried about what's JL going to say, right?
right.
So an activity I love to do, really simple. Folks can play this right now wherever they're sitting. Is called band names. Okay, you can play this with one friend, with 5 friends, and this is the whole activity. You make up a band name. You can look around the room for ideas. If you got nothing, you can say, the silly dolphins or empty water bottles, and your partners are just going to say, "I love it. I love it." And the whole
Right.
practice there is to notice how we judge our own band names when we say them and we worry about them being right or wrong. When, as we all know from the bands we love, there are no rules for band names. It can just be a number, a word, an idea. But just
Yeah.
to notice how quickly we are self-critical with something as innocuous as a made-up band name, right? And to
Yeah.
just notice that and not be angry at ourselves for that, but just to notice that we're judging ourselves on that. So maybe sometimes when we're judging ourselves, it's all in our head. Other people aren't judging us as harshly as we are.
I'm going to butcher this quote, and I don't remember who said it, but it was something along the lines of, we spend so much time worrying about what others think about us, we'd be shocked to realize how little they think about us at all. Right. And I think
Right.
there's some truth in that, where we tend to over index on what people think of us. Not that they never do, not that there's never judgment, because there is. But I do think you're probably right. One, people don't think about us as much as we think they do. And two, it's an extension of that idea of assuming good intent. Most people want you to succeed. The vast majority of people want you to succeed, especially in moments like this. I wonder, so I think that's probably easy to demonstrate with what you're saying with the band names. How do you take that a step further? How do you build on that to kind of help people assume good intent in a broader sense within an organization?
Yeah, so I'm the Better Meetings director at Artly Working, and I think I talk to companies about how meetings I think are really an inflection point where you're setting a culture that can either build that sense of trust, of support, or you can kind of crush it, right? And
Yeah.
so a question is if you say at a meeting, JL, or someone says at a meeting at an organization, hey, who's got an idea for this new marketing campaign, right? Do people actually feel comfortable throwing out their band name, right? Throwing out their
Yep.
idea against the wall, or are they going to be judged and they going to be knocked down? And sometimes when people hear about improv, they hear this idea of like yes and, right, and saying yes
Right.
and to the ideas. And sometimes the pushback I get from companies is we can't say yes to everything, Andrew. I can't just like take everyone's ideas and do a marketing campaign with each of them because they're all beautiful flowers and snowflakes. But what I remind them is that saying yes and is really about saying yes to the person and hearing their idea, right? So it's about acknowledging the
Mhm.
person and the idea and growing on it. Because too often, when someone throws out a crazy idea, we laugh at it or shut it down or end the
Right.
conversation when maybe that was the first idea of 10 crazy ideas and that 10th one was brilliant, right? So it's about
Yeah.
creating a culture where there's, like you said, that psychological safety and that trust to speak up so that those good ideas can be elevated because so often those ideas just never come. I think one of the other things I love about improv and I try and encourage is that there are places for hierarchy in a workplace. And when we're having a meeting, when we're brainstorming, if we're genuinely all at a meeting with our ideas, there should be elements of the meeting that are non hierarchical, right? Where anyone's ideas
Yeah.
are really welcome. And even if this is about marketing, if someone in HR has an amazing idea or thought they want to throw out there, they should be able to do that, right? The company should
Right.
be able to encourage that because you want those great ideas from everyone.
Well, and it's interesting. You were talking about that idea of yes and I think the thing that came up for me is I don't think we realize how everything we do in a conversation in a meeting is a form of feedback. And like you said, it either builds up people's confidence, helps the ideas flow, or it breaks them down. I know one thing we do in our workshops is we kind of have a rule for feedback is it's always starts with one of three things: either I like, I wish, or I wonder. And to your point, yes, and is about acknowledging the person. But then I think there's also an element of when you actually give the feedback, make sure they know that it's your opinion. And then it's enough that it is like, I like, I wish, I wonder is a great way to say, here's what I like about it. Here's what I wish we could do more of. I wonder how we might do this. It's a great way to not bring the defenses up. So a lot of what you're talking about resonates with me. I think the next area, I think it definitely helps people connect. It definitely helps safety. What I'm wondering is when you're talking to an organization in those early stages, how do you help them engage or invest in something that really does feel human, emotional, experiential, and doesn't necessarily have that hard line to ROI?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one area, we say we make stronger teams and happier people. And what we've heard from companies we've worked with and why they've brought us back is really creating a culture that people want to be there and employee retention
Mhm.
and how much we think about the cost of hiring and training employees. And that if we're not actively making an effort to make it an environment where they want to be, they're going to leave. I think the other part of it is we're often brought in to do onboarding for staff to create a culture and to embody the values from day one. A lot of companies kind of have values on some random page on their website, and that's about it.
Maybe
And they
some
wish they
posters
were
on their
more part
wall.
of it. Yeah, and so I think folks often we start there with, like, the new hires. Sometimes when someone's been there for 10 years, there's a resistance to be like, "I know how it's
Yeah.
done. Don't come in here and tell me how to do my job." But when
Right.
people are just starting, there's an openness both from leadership and from the people joining to say, "Let me actually think about how we wanna treat each other and how we wanna build things." And when we're coming in with teams, I mean, in terms of what you were saying about we're always giving that feedback, the number one thing that I see as either a positive or negative sign is does the team leader join this program? Right.
Right.
Because if they hire you, JL, or they hire me to come in and lead a program, and then the team leader's like, you guys have fun with Andrew. I'm going to go do real work. I'll see you later.
Right.
Immediately, it just sends a message that they don't see the value in this work when really there's so much value every day to the work that they do. And it's really about creating that company culture that is more creative and more productive every day going forward.
Right. No, I love that. And I would love to dig in more on the improv. I was thinking the whole time about like, let's do a quick improv thing here. Didn't quite have the courage to bring it up earlier. And now we're kind of running out of time. That's my excuse and I'm sticking to it. But I am curious for someone who is nervous about trying improv but has the interest, what's something that they could start doing today, either on their own, with a friend, at work, that would help them kind of take that first step?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many games that are simple enough to explain and play very quickly. So I'll just share a really simple one that I love that just works on that listening and not getting ahead of our own thoughts, trying to think in the moment. And we can just play for 60 seconds. So it's called Breaking News, where we're going to take turns making up a news headline. And then the partner has to use any word from our headline to make up a new headline, right? So that we can't get ahead and we can't think ahead. So I could say, Breaking news, cats and dogs are now best friends, and you can take any word from that headline and make a new news headline.
So I could say something like dogs are identified as man's worst friend, not best friend. I
Perfect.
don't
And then I could say breaking news, the worst tornado that has ever struck Florida is on its way.
No, I love it. I think we do another similar one where it's called Tigers and Bears, and we use it to kind of warm people up in creative exercises where the goal is just to come up with as many reasons tigers are great or bears are great, and it's just same sort of thing. It stops you from thinking about what's true, and it helps you
Hmm.
think more about like what's next and what's possible. And I think there's a lot of power in that, even as yes, it's improv, but I do think it really does bump up the creativity, open people to new ideas. So I love every minute of it. Andrew, unfortunately, we do have to wrap up. For anyone who would like some help with improv, maybe help making their meetings more fun, what's the best way for them to reach out and get into contact?
Yeah, so they can email me just Andrew at artlyworking.com. That's ARTLY working.com. And happy to talk about all the different programs we do. And I'm based in Philadelphia and we have a team in New York as well, but we travel all over. So we'd love to talk about improv and how we can help meetings and anything else.
Awesome. Andrew, thank you so much. For everyone else who's made it all the way to the end with us, as always, while you're down there leaving that 5-star review, maybe leave a comment. How is improv working for you? What's holding you back from trying improv? We'd love to hear from you. And then if you know anyone who's interested or maybe could use some help running a better meeting, share the episode with them, introduce them to Andrew, and share the wealth. Andrew, thank you again. This was an absolute great conversation. I loved it.
Thank you. Thanks, Jail.
Awesome. Everyone else, we'll see you next time on Breakthrough Innovation.